This episode is brought to you by Monogram. Welcome to the Design Dash podcast, your guide to designing a life you love. Join us as we explore the keys to living the life you want without compromise. Today on Design Dash podcast, we are thrilled to welcome the incredibly inspiring Erin Cummings. So Erin is a powerhouse of entrepreneurial insight. She journeyed from founding a seasonal startup paddleboard yoga business to creating Yes Yoga, which is a transformative lifestyle brand in Texas. She's a testament to lifelong learning, which is one of our values at Laura U Design Collective. She currently is pursuing an MS in entrepreneurship at University of Houston. She's passionate about empowering women to overcome imposter syndrome and embrace their full potential. She's also a client of Laura U. So we just got really lucky to work together, and she's a really fun creative collaborator. And so on the flip side, I'm working personally through her awesome journal that she's published. So she's a author. It's the Possibility Project, and it's all about creating what's possible based on what's already working in your life and what you truly value. So there's so many things that Erin has to share that really align with what we're doing at Design Dash too. So thanks so much for joining us today, Erin.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we'll just dive right in. So the first question is, you've built a very big life. So you've already accomplished so much. And it sounds like from an outside perspective that you're doing that really intentionally. So we'd love to know, when did you start to believe that you could design a life you love? Like, was there an aha moment where you're like, man, I can do anything I want? Or has it been more organic and you kind of go where life directs you? Like, is it intentional?
It is intentional. I'm like, do you want childhood trauma or should we go?
It all stems from childhood trauma.
What's interesting is my husband and I are high school sweethearts, and we moved in together when we were 18, and we have been on our own ever since. And while that is crazy, I think to most people, it really started, we're both from Kansas. We both went to the same university, but when my husband got his job, they moved us to Houston. And when we moved to Houston, we didn't have any family. And I think that's really kind of the start of like, I've always been a goal setter. I've always like kind of strived for the next thing. But when we got to Houston, it was like, okay, this has to work between two of us and our life and our house and all the things. And so I think that's when we started being more intentional. And then it's kind of grown ever since. And like the real intentional mindfulness affirmation kind of stuff started when I started practicing yoga. So it's just kind of bloomed and blossomed from there.
There's a lot to unpack in that paragraph. Okay. So high school sweethearts, which I don't think sounds as crazy and as some people do, because I met my husband when I was a sophomore in college. And so we've been together, like we grew up together, I guess, for all intents and purposes. And so did you. And so I think my first question is not even a question, I guess. That partnership sound, like you said the word we a lot. And so it's very much a we. It's the two of you together. And so, right. Okay. So the two of you, he's also an entrepreneur. Is that correct?
No, he works for big finance corporate.
Oh, okay.
He's in oil and gas, but he is what us entrepreneurs, I'm sure you know, call entrepreneurs. So he works on a business within his business. So he still works for corporate, but he's definitely in charge of his like his book and his stuff. Yeah.
And so for you, where did this? Okay. And so it sounds like he really encourages your entrepreneurial spirit. So where did that stem from? Is that like childhood trauma again, or where is this entrepreneurial spirit coming from?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm doing my MS in entrepreneurship, and that's a question I've been asking a lot of women lately. And for me, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've always wanted to have my own business. Since I was a kid, I was riding my bike around the neighborhood selling magazines, and I would sell magazines, and then I would get points, and I could turn those points into cash and get more magazines, and all that. And then it was like, I would do things when we were here. After we had moved to Houston, we had our first child, and it was like just me at home, alone, bored. And then I started baking and selling cupcakes, and then sewing and selling clothes, and it was just, it all kind of just kept escalating. And I would, work on one project and think like, oh, I could make this bigger. And I would just kind of keep going. But yeah, my husband is very supportive of, I feel lucky, but I also don't want to say lucky because we work really hard at, intentionality and like talking, and we have hard conversations, and he is really supportive of my ventures and my ideas. And, it's same with me with him, and work a lot. And so it's a true partnership.
We'd like to thank our good friends at Monogram Appliances. We've partnered with Monogram for over a decade with our design firm, Laura U Design Collective, and we're so happy to partner with them in producing the Design Dash podcast. Monogram sources the highest quality materials for their appliances, from commercial grade stainless steel to unscratchable sapphire glass. Monogram ensures lasting beauty and unmatchable quality for your luxury kitchen. And not only that, but they have an amazing team who we love working with, and we know you will too. So thanks, Monogram.
And so the health and wellness space. So you got into, you own Yes Yoga. And so it sounds like there's a journey there to get into that. So there's, like you were saying, there's so many different ways you can focus that entrepreneurial energy. So how did it happen that it is in the health and wellness space, and specifically yoga?
Yeah. So after I had my son, I was at home, doing all these little projects, and then realized I needed a community. I was alone. I was lonely. I didn't have any other mom friends. And so I joined this like Mommy and Me fitness group, and I ended up going all the time. And there was a couple of times she needed help or we couldn't do it. And I was like, oh, I'll just step in and teach class, like no big deal. And then I ended up helping her open another location. And so I was running one side of her Mommy and Me fitness group, and then she had another, and then she wanted to add yoga. And then I had gone to a yoga studio without my kid and was like, well, this is way better. So I was like, oh my God, like, no kid, this is amazing, So I ended up
No
loving
offense
it.
to our young kids.
Yeah, not sorry. Yeah, but I ended up loving it, and ended up getting certified and just dove in, and I managed a studio. And what a lot of people don't know is that like yoga studios are actually really toxic atmospheres. Most yoga studios behind the scenes are really toxic.
I would never think
really
that.
Yeah, they're really hard to work for. There's a lot of drama and backstabbing and cattiness, and I experienced that. And then so I with a friend at the time, we opened the studio because we were like, we want to create value for clients, but we want to create value for staff and employees and, all of that kind of stuff. And so that's ended up, kind of how it all happened.
Well, that cattiness, where do you think that stems from? Because I have heard this before. I have a friend who, she used to own a yoga studio. She was like, I can't handle, she's like, you'd think that the health and wellness space, everybody would be healed, and they're not. So where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, I make this joke that yoga instructors are kind of like artists. Like they are very expressive and free will. And it's like, how some artists are, they like to charge a lot or don't like to charge, and it's just their art, And so sometimes it gets in the way of the work, and because it's a service-based business, it's so emotional. And, the flip, like really ugly side of it is all the guru stuff. And there's a lot of like yoga generational trauma that has been brought down. But I think a lot of it too is the yoga business model as itself doesn't actually work. Like you need multiple revenue streams, and you need a lot of other things going on. And so what happens is I think people get really tied up in that, and then it becomes really cutthroat. So like the basic business model is very hard to make work. And there's a lot of other things you have to bring in. And I think it's hard for people because, you end up being a yoga teacher who becomes a studio owner with potentially no business background. And then it gets very complicated and dicey.
Okay.
Process. Yeah.
That sounds familiar. Are you talking about the interior design industry? Uh-huh.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I can only imagine it's like that. And, really, I think it's, for me, there are certain women that you can be around that like really build each other up. And then there's the women who kind of haven't gotten there yet. And it's, kind of where we come from and where we're going. And if you breed the cattiness, it just keeps going. But if you stop it and you create those boundaries, then you just don't let it in. And I think that's a big part of it.
I love that statement you just made. There are the women that are there to lift each other up, and then there are the women that just haven't gotten there yet. So
Yeah.
that's very constructive. There's hope.
Yes. Yeah. There's hope.
Well, because we get that a lot. Like we're only women here at the firm, and we're working with you, and you're building an all women team, which all of us here was like, that is so awesome,
Yeah.
especially with like a female builder, which of course is so traditionally male. But anytime I tell other people that we work on an all women firm, they're just like, but doesn't it get catty? Like, ooh, isn't it hard to work with other women? And I do want to tell them, like, no, of course not. We're all great all the time, which, nobody's perfect all of the time. But I guess one of the things that I always want to say is like, it's not because it's for women, it's because we're human. And I think that that's one of the things that you're mentioning too, is that like, we also have the capacity to grow and learn. So I think it's interesting that like, we're still kind of dealing with that in these female oriented environments where the question is always like, well, are you guys catty? And I mean, I guess the answer is yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, right. I always say I'm a recovering asshole. Like, I mean, I used to be. I was in a sorority and like, I know how it goes, but now it's like there's been a big jump. And so I'm always like, yeah, I get it. I'm a recovering asshole. Like, I know, so it's just kind of I think it comes back to intention, at the end of the day. And it's like, do I want to keep burning bridges or do I want to keep making connections? And I'd rather make the connection than burn the bridge. So it's like, it's not an age thing. I think it's just having that intentionality where you're like, I'm just going to let you have this one. Like you gotta pick that. I'll let you win this argument. I'll let you think what you think.
It's all yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Along that same vein, Erin, I saw, prepping for this, I saw that you were in the University Moms newsletter, and I think I'm paraphrasing here, but you were talking about work-life balance being bullshit. And I think that's something that we talk a lot about here at Design Dash. So I guess like, what do you mean by that? No, but how do you kind of carve out time for yourself? And like, you've got so many things going on. It sounds like you've got to do alternate revenue streams with a yoga business model, and you have a family. Like, how do you thrive with all that going on?
I think it's the thing is like, there is no balance. You pick, you have to choose. Like the scales are always tipped one way or the other. Like nothing is ever perfectly balanced in anything ever. Like the laundry's always full or it's always empty. Like there's no like, it's not like two dirty clothes. You know what I mean? And so it's just like, I think at the end of the day, you have to choose. And, I wake up in the morning, I do whatever I need to do to like get my head right. And then it's like, what are the 3 things I have to do today? And I always have those like in my mind written down somewhere. And if those have to do with my kids, great. It has to do with my husband, great. If it's my work, great. But like, it's a rotation and it's a moving object rotation of like who gets put first and where. And that doesn't mean they're not valued or they're at the bottom of the list. It's just like I can only focus on one thing, and this is this podcast, like this is the time that I'm talking to you guys. And so like if my kid's on an iPad, they're honestly not complaining, like it's fine. So but I mean it's just like you really have to, I can't sit here and talk to you and do my newsletter and go do the laundry. Like you have to choose intentionally where your focus is, one thing at a time. And I think what maybe you guys don't know is I'm actually closing the studio and pivoting the business.
Okay.
Yeah. So my lease is up, but I think that's another thing. And like with even the word yes, it's like we open this business to say yes to things in your life. And that was like kind of part of it. It's like my new yes has come. And so you have to, our little, there's always that saying that's like, you have to say no to create a yes, or something like that. But it's just like, there are things that, you have to turn off and turn on.
So now you're saying no to the yoga studio. What are you saying yes to? What's next? What are you doing? I'm excited.
What's next? So much. Yeah, so I'm actually really excited. I've been doing all this research for my master's program. I really want to bring mindfulness to female founders. And in their interviews that I've done, and in part of it, like there will be a whole business with that I'm working on creating. But the big part of it is I'm getting back to like a little bit of finance and getting into angel investing. And I'm signing up with 2 different angel investing firms and focusing on female founders and funding them and like getting the seed money so they can grow and scale their businesses. So
I love it.
that's kind of the part of it. And then I'll have like a little thing on the side for mindfulness. I want to work with super small teams, like solopreneurs, 3 employees or less, and really help them create mindfulness, strategize, get their, minds organized and less chaotic.
And so how did you make that decision? Because that's a big decision to move from yes yoga that you've been doing for a while. Like, is this, are you following your journal? Is it that you're like letting your values guide you? Is it a pros and cons list? How are you making your big decisions?
It's a lot of everything. Therapy, it's a lot of everything. Yeah. My lease is up, and so that's a big part of it. Like we couldn't come to, negotiations. Like there's no balance. Someone has to, win, and it was the landlord, and I wasn't willing to cross the line. And so there's stuff like that where it was like, well, I could fight it, I could move, I can do whatever, but it's also, I try and step back and look at like the eagle view of what's going on in our lives. And, with middle school and, the other ones going up in elementary. And so it's like, I feel like emotionally they need me a lot more. And I want to be around and not be so tied to like a physical location.
Those middle school years are real fun.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Melissa and I both have middle schoolers too. So we're right there with you.
Yeah. I think all of they're all the same age. Yeah.
Yep. 7th. They're going into 7th.
Yes. Yeah. Because my older one's a boy, and I keep telling, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm dating a guy that hates me because I'm just like trying to like get him to love me, and he's just like, okay, like wow.
Well, you can't break up, so good luck.
I know. Thank God.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything you're doing sounds like, just to pivot a little bit, it takes a ton of motivation. So what does that mean to you? Like the word motivation, I don't know. It feels like kind of tricky. I've been through a period of time where I've felt completely unmotivated. I just have so much stuff happening. And I'm naturally a very like ambitious, motivated person. So what do you do to like, have you ever felt not motivated, and how do you get back to it?
Yeah, I'm same as you. Like, I feel like I'm naturally just like always doing something, very motivated, need to be doing something. I think my mental health honestly drives a lot of it. If I get really in my head, like I will lose my shit. Like I really will. But it's not the success, the money, the whatever. It's like now, because my intentions are about like truly helping other people and being of service to them, like that is what motivates me to like help others be great. And I think that like having that distinction in my own personal mission and my own personal values that I'm striving towards and working towards, I think also really helps. And yeah, there are days where I'm like, fuck all of this and what am I doing, But I think it's just like, we're also allowed to have those days, or we're like overwhelmed or whatever. But, I think I'm just like, I'm naturally just one of those people that is always doing something. And I think too, like back to what you said at the very beginning, like being the lifelong learner, I think that's a big part of it, because I'm just always, I want to grow, I want to keep learning. And I think that, those things like spark new ideas.
I mean, I have I could talk about this because I think we're really similar.
Yeah. I'm not as intrinsically motivated. No, well, it's for different stuff. And I think that it's really changed over time. And of course, like I'm working through this in therapy, but I have a lot of negative self-talk. And I think that really prevents me from going forward. Like I think Laura's really optimistic and I'm not as much.
Yeah. I'm like, you're talking badly about yourself.
I think that's funny. I am not. I am like my husband. I love black. I wear black. We joke that my soul is black. Like
Yeah.
I am not optimistic at all. Yeah. I am
Oh,
doomsday. Like not crazy doomsdayer, but I am
Yes,
straight to
no,
worst
I'm the
case
same.
scenario at all times. Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
that that's also been kind of motivating for me. It's just like, okay, well,
that's terrible, guys. Like, what?
It's
Take
fine.
action
We're
on it.
working through it. It'll be okay.
Everything's gonna be
We're
okay,
getting
y'all. We're all
but
okay.
that's good because I think that's great to see somebody else who like
professional
is
help. It's
also
fine.
like has that negative self-talk, but is so successful. And again, you have to like define that success for yourself and actually say to yourself, hey, I deserve this
Yeah.
success. But sometimes, like you were talking about getting in your head. Sometimes when I get in my head, I'm just like, oh, I don't, and then I spiral.
Yeah. I started, I started really figuring out that there's like two, you have your two wolves on your shoulders, right? And so like mine, I've kind of dubbed like the one that helps me like go forward or the one that brings me back. And so I kind of gave them like it's like how you talk to yourself. And I gave them their own little like personalities. So like one of them I call the mob boss because I get so mad. I will get so mad at people and I'll just be like, like in my head, I'm like, fuck you, fuck this. And then I'm like, fuck your grandma. And then I'm like, oh my God, the grandma? Like, what am I doing? And then the other one is like, I've dubbed like a ballerina and she like leaps over and she's got very graceful and does all of these like very nice thing. And I try to live, like in the middle a little bit, but I think it's like realizing when I
in
hit
between
both points.
fuck your grandma
God.
and I'm gonna plie.
I'm like, oh my God, poor grandma. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you
I
use
did
it as like a visualization. It's very visual for you. Like you have wolves on your
Yeah,
shoulders.
I'm a
And they're
very
gonna
visual. Yeah,
follow
I'm
that.
a very visual person. So I need to be
Yeah.
able to like see it in my mind. Yeah.
So you like have to like shut your mean wolf down, your mob boss.
Yeah. Yeah. Mob boss
Wow.
needs to
Melissa,
back to
do you have like a negative
No, I don't, but I
self-talk
think I need
wolf
to
on your
get one.
shoulder?
I mean, I am getting into the
I know. It sounds like
I think mine
personifying
would
it
be
may be a
cats,
good
though. I really
strategy.
identify with that animal.
Cats? Huh. I'm learning so much right now. Like I feel like I need to pep talk you every morning.
I
I
mean,
didn't
it's just
realize you
I've
were a
always
negative
been this way. Like
self-talker.
I'm recognizing it now, but I'd always used it as a driving force, but now I realize, oh, like now you get used to it,
Mm,
right? Like you get used to living in that negative space that then the
yeah.
positivity seems so foreign. And so it's like that negativity is never going to go away. That's why I like that
Yeah.
you have this visualization. Like they're both there. Like, and you can acknowledge that negative part when you see it, but you're just like, okay, I see you. I embrace you, but I'm going to move towards the positive. And it's just like a daily exercise.
wow.
Yeah, and I don't know, Laura, too, if this comes up for you, but like being, as an entrepreneur, especially like a successful one, like being in a room with other successful people and especially around like men, it's like, you know, it's hard because sometimes they don't give you the time of day. And then if you're a negative self-talker, it spirals more and you're like, do I deserve to be here? Did I do the same as them? Like, who am I? And it's like, it's kind of all of that where then you kind of realize like, do I
I
know what
see.
I'm talking about?
So then that imposter syndrome kicks in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think earlier in my career, I absolutely felt that. And then at some
Yeah.
point, I'm on the other side of the mountain. Like in my mind, I went up a mountain. Now hit the peak because I don't know. I just did at some point. And now I'm on the other side. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't give a shit. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I've hit my I don't give a shit era. So that's kind of nice.
Love
You guys, so do you feel like you'll never hit
Oh, no,
your
well,
I
I mean,
don't
I
give
still
a
feel
shit
that way
era?
sometimes too.
maybe I will. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'd love
I mean,
to
I
be
guess
there. Yeah.
so. For me, it's more like I'm competitive. So if I
Yeah.
see, it's not negative self-talk. It's like, why haven't I done that yet? What the hell have I been doing? I am moving too slowly. I have wasted my time. Like, how are they that far ahead of me? So for me, it's very competitive.
Yeah.
It's not that I can't do it because I feel like I can do it.
Yeah.
So
So you think you're more like comparison syndrome than like imposter syndrome?
yes, yes, I do. Probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
I try not to though. That is actually something that I try to I'm mindful about. Because I'm like, well, it's
Yeah.
completely different. Like we're different people. So I do have comparison self-talk. Yes. And that is also probably stemming from childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So so talk to me about mindfulness because I want to know like how are you implementing mindfulness? I guess for yourself, like how did you even come to the realization you needed to have that practice in your life? And then how are you helping others with it? Because I need help.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with the studio and learning yoga, there's like, yoga has its own philosophy. And that's another thing with most studios. They don't actually teach you a lot of the philosophy, you just do the poses. So yoga has what's called 8 limbs, and the poses are really only one part of those 8 pieces. But because, they're pretty and everyone looks great, it's the picture on Instagram is the pose. And
Yeah.
so when I opened the studio, I wanted to make sure we were incorporating the lifestyle part of it, which was the philosophy. And I wanted the philosophy not to be watered down, but to be digestible for people. I wanted to make sure that the movement was functional and the, philosophy was functional for them as well. But what really pushed me over the edge was my dad was in a horrific motorcycle accident in 2019, and
Mm.
he was by himself, flew off of his bike. He was airlifted to a hospital. He was out in the middle of nowhere. And he was in the hospital for 75 days. He just really bad. Like anything that could go wrong did. And he made a full, complete recovery. But I am his primary caregiver. And, he had since moved to Houston right before our daughter was born. But I'm the one that took care. I mean, the doctors took care of him. But I was the one that
Mhm.
was there making all the decisions, doing all the things. And I ended up with severe PTSD. And
Okay.
so I was having breakdowns and, uncontrolled flashbacks and just all of these stressors. And so that's how the book started. I would go
Okay.
in every day and I would write down, like, what are 3 things I can do today? And it started like that. And then I started asking myself the same questions, like, what am I grateful for today? Or, what do I look forward to? Or, all of this kind of stuff. And so that's how that started. And then it became so important for my mental health and just for the health of my family for me to be, once again, not balanced, but a little more stable in my recovery with all of that. I had a lot of also help from, very great doctors, but like doing all of that is what put me into my mindfulness practice. And I can really tell, like, if I haven't been taking care of myself, like I can really feel it. My negative self-talk is worse, but when I'm working on myself, it's not really there, and it ebbs and flows. But what I'm trying to do now is, like, as you're measuring your metrics for your KPIs for your business, it's like, what metrics can you use for yourself, for your mental health or your mindfulness practice? And so it's kind of tracking that, seeing how that works, and being in the ebb and flow of all of it, just like the businesses.
That's an incredible story. And of course,
Mm.
great advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Thanks.
I'm like
Yeah. I
mindfulness and
yeah, I
metrics.
would never
Whoever
want
thought
to
those
call
would come
people like
together?
that. Say again.
I said mindfulness and metrics. Like that's an interesting thing. Those
Yeah.
are two interesting concepts to pull together, actually, because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Like to me, metrics are something I'm comfortable with. I'm like, yes, we can set these goals, we know what we're going for, and we can track them. Mindfulness feels
Mm,
very nebulous to me. So it's
yes.
almost just like it's not tactile. A metric is it's data. Mindfulness feels
Yes.
very just like not fluffy, but ethereal. So
Yes.
like the fact that you bring those two things together, I think is really interesting and ingenious. And it also helps me as someone who maybe not I don't understand mindfulness as much. It can help me put that into practice. And I think that's what I really love about your book is that it brings these concepts together and then gives me a framework to work with. And I need a framework. Like if it's not easy to follow, then I'm probably not going to do it. Like people are like, you need a meditation practice. okay, I know this, I'm aware, but that's just like very
Yeah.
loose. Like, I feel like the book
And
it gave me a
yeah,
framework, and I really enjoyed that.
the thing too, like I've been, doing all this research and talking to female founders, but no two female founders has had the same mindfulness definition. They've had the same concepts, but no one has said this is the definition of mindfulness, and it's been exactly repeated. And same thing with meditation. I think what gets lost in a lot of this is like meditation, though great, and there's studies and tons of research that it's so good for you and your brain and your neuroplasticity, but like if you have certain things that you're dealing with in your life, like sitting silent in meditation is the fucking worst. Like
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
just
like
not gonna
it is
happen.
not. And so I think it's like where the framework and the metrics come into play is it's like, once again, your definition of a success. It's your definition of mindfulness. It's the things you're doing that are working, that you see working for your life, that you can track and you can do. And then you can put all that into play. And then you can, pull back, step forward, change things up, just like you would for your business. But it is mindfulness is it is very fluffy. And when I talk to people, they're like, meditation and I don't know, so it's just like it's been so interesting to talk to people about, like, well, what do you think?
And so I participated in, for everyone listening, in Erin's research project for her master's. And so I'd like to hear about that. Like, I mean, I know what questions you asked me, but I'm assuming they're similar for everyone that you've interviewed. So I'm curious to see, what are your findings, and what are you asking? What are you finding? And is it consistent? Is it what you expected? What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. So I did this really awesome class last semester where you had to find a problem and create a solution with a business. And in that, you had to do customer discovery and interview for research. Well, I wanted to, help female founders with mindfulness. And, that's where you're trying to figure out the product, is getting all the information from them. But then it's really blown up, and everyone I've interviewed is like, tell me more, they want to see all the results. So I'm asking them, your basic demographic questions. So the first set of interviews, I interviewed 24 women with 24 different businesses. Like, no one had the same business. And then in all the findings, I asked them like the biggest struggle they have in their business, like as a business owner, how they logistically balance the schedule of their life, not work-life balance, but like, do you use Google Calendar? Do you have a nanny?
Yeah.
Like the logistics of how you're doing everything. And then, apps that they're using. And then I talked to them about their stress level, their mindfulness, working with a mastermind group or a business coach, asking their experience with all of that kind of stuff. And so I talked a lot about that. There are many answers that are across the board the same, and there are many answers across the board that are different. There's very similar business problems, right? Like the nurturing of you're getting the client. It's taking a lot longer for some of the solopreneurs to like get the client to buy something. It's taking longer. Or it's like they have a problem with employees, or they're having a problem, knowing what the next step of their business might be. They want to expand, but they haven't quite figured out the branches. And then it's like stress levels all over the place. I've categorized everyone in my head, but what I've really found out is I have categorized everyone by their practice in mindfulness. And so those who don't practice mindfulness are very chaotic. They can't seem to get ahead. They're spinning their wheels all the time. There's what I've dubbed the dating mindfulness, where they're doing a little bit. They haven't really seen the value show up in their life yet, but they're, we'll try it. Maybe. Yeah. And then there's what I've dubbed the BFDs, what they're big fucking deals is what I call her, which I put you in that category.
Yay!
Yeah, they're the ones that have like scaled their business. Their mindfulness might not be consistent, but it's on and off. They know the value. They're willing to take inherent risk and know it will stress them out, but they have the tools to catch themselves along the way. And then there's another one that I called married to mindfulness. And those are the women who practice mindfulness consistently with a very strict structure, but they don't want the stress. So they tend to take a step back and not bring stress into their life. And, I asked a question of like, what would keep you from doing these practices? And their answer was nothing. I always do them. So it's kind of like,
that sounds like
every
a
day.
good approach.
Yeah.
Not one that I
So
can commit to, but sounds really like peaceful.
Yeah, I know. Their life sounds great. Yeah, but it's also interesting because most people kind of put themselves between a 4 and a 6 on the stress. I gave everyone a stress scale. So it's like, tell me how stressed out you are from 1 to a 10, with 10 being a stress. And, some days people were like, oh, I'm a 2 today, but I'm normally most everyone lived between, I think like the median I figured out was like a 6.8 or something like that. And
Wow,
for me,
that's pretty high.
and for me, I think everyone should start at a 5. Like, you're an entrepreneur, like your stress level's already in the middle, like it's already hard. And then, most of us are moms, or
you're at an 8.
Yeah. You're obviously a 12. But like, I just, no one said they were a 9 or 10. And then I really only had 1 or 2 that said 2 or 3, but everyone kind of lived in that middle zone. And, it's once again perception. We all deal with hard and stress in a different way. But yeah, so those are some of the kind of key things I've figured out so far. But a lot of this round that I've interviewed has been really interesting. Is some of them have never seen themselves as entrepreneurs, and they kind of just fell into what they're doing. And so they're kind of experiencing entrepreneurship in a different way, but they had come from corporate, where that stress and those things were a much different beast. And so that's kind of the thing. But I've been this round interviewing much more big BFDs, like super successful, to kind of see what the link is between, the dating and the dating mindfulness and a BFD, and like what the practices are and kind of what's going on. But a lot of the mindfulness, like I said, is it's very personal to her.
Melissa, do you have a mindfulness practice?
I'm an inconsistent one, though. Yeah. Dating mindfulness. Yeah, and I mean,
what would you say? So what's your mindfulness
I used to be
practice?
really, really good at it.
And
right after I had my daughter, because I wasn't working, right? So I would have been like a 2 on that stress scale. So I went to yoga every day. I loved my yoga teacher. I would go from like 10 to 11 every day, and I meditated every day. And I was like in the best shape. I felt the best mentally. But then of course you go back to work, and like you're right, it's chaotic when I don't have a mindfulness practice. Then I'm just like going, and I have no purpose. Like there's nothing tethering me to what matters. So my mindfulness practice right now is really just, if I can do yoga, of course that's included, but it's lying down on my back, feet up the wall, and there's nothing. Sometimes I'll listen to binaural beats, or like a binaural music that my therapist keyed me into. Ooh. That I really like, because we're working on EMDR. But like, and one of the things that I have problems with is I'm just like, I have to do it for at least a certain amount of time. And then, but what my therapist says is, no, you can do it for 30 seconds. Like, even if it's just like, if that's all the time you have, that's all the time you have. But it's 30 seconds more than you would have done if you didn't do it at all. So I think right now I'm just trying to give myself grace to have any sort of mindfulness practice. But yeah, it's that simple. Lie on the ground. I put my feet up in the air, and 30 seconds, like sometimes I can do 10 minutes, and oh my gosh, it's the best part of my day when I can do it.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I know. I mean, mine right now consists of the 10 minutes that I put my red light mask on, and I lay there, because you have to lay there with your eyes closed, and I'm just like laying there with my red light mask on, because I'm a multitasker. So that is that's my mind.
I love the red light mask because everyone's so freaked out about it. They're just like, and then they go off because they're like, oh my God,
I know. Yeah, my kids are like, what the hell is that? Yeah, like I'm just gonna back out of the room slowly. Fine, bye. This is my red light mask time. Everyone leave.
Yeah. Get a red light mask.
Right. EMDR, is that tapping?
So it's EMDR. Bilateral motion. This one is eye movement. But yeah, I have a lot of I really need to get back to having like my mind body connection that I've just lost over just like the past few years, are just really stressful. So I'm getting back into
it. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of stuff. I don't know I mean, we could keep talking about this for like days. I have so many things. But Melissa, do you have a wrap up question? I have like a couple
I was
rapid
going to say,
fire
Erin,
questions, but
what's like your
Oh,
do you have
cool.
one
anything?
thing that you can tell? I mean, obviously, you've been speaking to a lot of busy female entrepreneurs, and a lot of our listenership, that's where they are. What's like the one piece of advice, whether it's from you or from the women that you've talked to, that you think they could really benefit from?
The question I always ask myself, and like to your point earlier, when you were like, well, how did you decide to move to one thing to another? The question I always ask is, in 5 years from now, if I'm doing the same thing, am I still happy? Like if I'm in the same spot, doing the same thing, surrounded by the same people, is that working enough, or do I need to make a change? And I think that usually sparks something needs to change, and that it ends up evolving over time, right? And this can't work we have to remember a lot of these mindfulness techniques and meditations and whatever can't work in systemic and societal true problems. Like it's like you have to break up those two things. So like if not that anyone here potentially is, but if this was a lady in like a very serious abusive relationship, like obviously she doesn't want to be in that anymore, and that's a different, in 5 years, yes, she wants to be out, but she has to be very careful about those steps that she takes, right? But if we're talking career and goals and stuff like that, then this is very easy. And so like that's kind of where I always look, is like, okay, 5 years from now, if I have the same friends, if I'm drinking the same amount, if I'm not working out, if I'm not meditating, it's like kind of all this. It's like, okay, what changes? And it's really simple. It just starts with something really simple and it goes from there. And I think you have to do what works, because if you're trying to implement something into your life that doesn't fit, it's never going to work.
That's a great
check-in. Yeah.
I love that concept. Yeah. So it's like playing it forward. What does this look like later? So when I stopped drinking altogether about almost a year and a half ago. And that was the one thing that worked for me when I stopped drinking at all. And it was like, play this forward. If I have a drink right now, I'm going to have two. And then I'm going to feel like shit in the morning. So what does that look like tomorrow? And it looks freaking terrible. So that was a big change. But I like that thinking, like, okay, 5 years from now, what am I doing now that I still want there? And what don't I want? I think that works.
I think that's the thing. Like, what can I develop and what can I develop? What can I sunset? And you can kind of go.
Okay. So do you have a book you'd recommend? Obviously you have one, maybe a couple.
A book I would recommend. Oh yeah. I'm like, reading a bunch right now. I'm actually taking a class called Books Entrepreneurs Should Read. It's been a lot of fun.
Ooh, I love that.
I don't read like fiction, fiction novels, like fantasy or anything like that. I'm always doing self-development and stuff. So I am obsessed, total crush on Ryan Holiday and all things Stoicism. I love his daily journal. I love all the Stoic books that he has, Obstacles the Way, like all of those kind of books. I love those. I love Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think that's a book everyone should read. It's such a great book. And then I've been super obsessed with, her name's Jane Marie. She has this really awesome podcast about MLMs and how like terrible they are. And she just released a book called Selling the Dream. And that has just blown my mind. As an entrepreneur, I don't know, it's like one of those kind of situations. And that's been a really great read. That's been awesome. And then I just finished the book that's like The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
I'm reading it again right now.
That's awesome. I know. It's like, I feel like it was such a good book for me to read with closing the studio and like, going into something new and just remembering that like, this is hard and it's just going to be, and it's okay,
Melissa, what book did I recommend yesterday? Hard Thing About Hard Things. But you read it at certain seasons, like you just said. It's a book for like a season of your life. It's a good one to come back to. And also, obviously, The Possibility Project, which is a guided journal that Erin wrote herself, and it's awesome. Okay, What's your favorite? I have a couple of questions. There's a follow-up to this one.
Okay.
What's your favorite vacation type? City, beach, mountains? What are you doing?
I love the beach. I want to sit and look at something great. I don't go skiing. I don't do any of that. Like if it's cold, I want to be inside looking at a pretty mountain, but like I'm a sit and look at something pretty kind of person.
I am too. And I rarely find, like, if you're going on an adventure vacation, do not invite me. I am not leaving the pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm probably like, if you're like, yeah, you're like, I want to take a walk down the beach. Cool. Have fun.
Yeah. We, it's our 15-year wedding anniversary
congratulations.
this summer, and we're going to Greece coming up. And yeah, I was like, do not over plan this trip, bro. Like, just like, can we please relax? You know, like we don't have to do everything all the time. Yeah.
Where are you going in Greece?
We'll see what happens. Athens and Santorini. We've never been,
nice.
so I'm like, excited. Yeah.
Okay. And last question from me. Do you work when you're on vacation?
Yes. Yes, I do.
What does that look like?
Yeah. So it's, once again, this whole, what do I really want to see myself doing in 5 years is the way we're vacationing, the way I want to vacation. Because I'm an entrepreneur, I do all the bookkeeping and I run payroll, and there's certain things that I have to do, and I can't just not pay my employees because I went to Greece. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there are certain things that, have to get done. And what we've started doing and is currently working, because my husband's the same, like his job is always on and he's always going to. And we started setting a time limit. We both know there's certain things we have to do. We both have kind of, it's like, I think this will take about an hour and a half. And so we set aside, hey, we're going to work 90 minutes. And it's usually like when we get there, like in the lull of whatever's going on with the day. And so we purposely, once again, intentionally set the time that we can both work. We both have a time limit. And then after that, phones off until the next time we decide we can work again.
I love it.
That's a boundary.
That's great.
Good.
Yeah, that's smart. We're not intentional. Yeah. He's just like, I've got meetings. If we're like last summer, we went to Greece. Like I have meetings from 4 p.m. or I'm making stuff up. It may have been 9 a.m. I don't even know. But he will just tell me like, I'm meeting from this time to this time. And I'm like,
yeah,
cool. I will be by the pool and I will see you when I see you.
Yeah. Or I mean, if it's like that where I'm like, well, fuck it, I'm just going to go to the spa. Like, okay, who cares? Right. But, but then, if it's like, I'm doing something, then we can both work and not feel like one of us feels
you don't feel
left
guilty
out or whatever. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I feel like we've gotten so much good info here. Like I'm going to start all my decision making by like, what does this look like 5 years from now? How do I feel about that? Because there's also the thought, like the 10 years, 10 months, 10 minutes, like how do you feel about those decisions? But like, I can visualize myself in 5 years.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I feel like the 10 years, 10 months, 10 minutes, that's like, I feel like that's a hard thing to
It's too many.
do.
It's
like,
too many.
I can't
That's
even
a lot.
count 10 months. You want me to make me do math? Like, why?
It's too many things. Just give me 5 years. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if people are looking for you, where can they find you on socials, your website, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So my website's just erinccummings.com. And then my social is at Erin Runs an Empire.
Awesome. Erin Runs an Empire. Yes. Manifesting. I love it. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great talking to you.
Yes. Thanks for having me, you guys.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out our next podcast, coming live next week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, you can find us and more wonderful stories like these on designdash.com. And make sure to follow us at Design Dasher on Instagram and TikTok. Till next time.